Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping.
Good morning. How is everybody? Happy almost Independence Day. You know, it falls in the middle of the week this week. I don't know how that's going to work out with the barbecues and stuff. I don't know about you, praying for good weather. I love my 4th of July. 4th of July is my favorite holiday. Well, next to Christmas. I don't know. I really like 4th of July. This very recently, Peggy and I have, by the way, I'm Galen Bell, by the way, for those of you who don't know me. Peggy and I were part of this congregation when it first started 20 years ago, and I see a bunch of my friends here that we actually helped build this building. I remember us doing that, and it's like coming home for us when we get to come and share with you. And so Dennis and Sharon out of town, he asked me to share a little bit with you today. And it's been a lot of fun. We've been watching some old videos. We had some of our old 8mm videotape and VHSs converted to DVD recently and had it uploaded to the cloud. That makes me sound like I know what I'm talking about when I say stuff like that. And it's been great to kind of relive some of those times. Someone asked me, they say, what was your favorite thing about your trip, your 6 years we lived in Crossville? And we said, Sophie and Burton were our two favorite things, our two kids that were born while we were here. But all the friendships we still have, and we get to come up here and visit with you guys today. I don't really preach much anymore. It was my previous job. Now I'm an assistant principal at East Ridge High School in Chattanooga. You guys pray for me. I'm at a school where 158, this last school year, 158 students out of 850 students were validated by the police department as being members of a gang at my school. And that's not an exaggeration. That's a real number. 98% of my students live below poverty line. They're very poor. And so that brings some challenges with it as well. But God's placed me exactly where he wants me right now. I'm getting a chance to stretch and grow, and I'm excited about the upcoming school year. And that's my mission field. That's a place where God's planted me, and I work with some amazing people, and there's some amazing kids there who overcome unbelievable hardship every day to come to school every day and do their best and try to be as successful as they can be, and they inspire me. So that's what I'm doing these days for those of you who haven't got to talk to in a while. So that's it. I love Independence Day because it makes me think back to how unusual this American experiment was. That before the American Revolution, basically most societies around the earth were divided up into royalty and peasants, and there wasn't anybody in between. That you were either royalty and privileged, or you were peasants, and you were locked into those things, and you could never go back and forth between those two worlds. And your life was pretty much dictated to you beforehand. A group of people said, no, I individually have some dreams and some goals, and they even said that it was the Bible that inspired them. Reading the Bible inspired them to come to a new world and carve out a new life based upon what they could do and trusting in God to bless them and help them to grow and accomplish the things that were on their heart to do. And even now, sometimes I'm afraid in our world, we are going back. We tend to go back to trying to group each other and ourselves into these communities. Now, I love it that we're called Grace Community Church. There are some positive things about being part of a community. When you're part of a community, that means that you're going to share together. You're going to share the good times and bad times and resources, and you're going to watch out for each other. And all those things are great about being a community. But that word has been perverted over the last few years politically, because now everyone belongs to a community. We have the black community, and it's all political. We have the black community believes this, and the white community believes this, and the educated group of educators community, and the gay community and lesbian community, and the left-handed drivers of tractor trailers community, and the right-handed biker nuns community. They believe this. I mean, you've got all these different communities now, and you got to belong to a community. You can't just be a person anymore who might believe this idea and this idea and this idea. People want to know, like you notice when you meet someone new, you ask them things like, where are you from? Oh, you're from Georgia. Okay. And what do you do? Oh, you're an accountant. So right then, the reason why we ask these questions, they're qualifying questions, because we're trying to narrow down what is this person like. And so we try to find out what groups they're part of. And if we know what group they're part of, then we can accurately judge them. Right? We can get a handle on what is this person like. Alabama fans are like this. Tennessee fans are like this. Vanderbilt fans are like this. We get this in our minds. We get the us and them and go, what group are they in? I remember when we lived in Crossville, when I first moved to Crossville, I don't know if you remember back when it was a thing here in Crossville. One of my students at Cumberland County High School where I was teaching said, Mr. Bell, is that red car in the parking lot yours? That Honda? I went, yeah. You don't have a number on it. Oh, yeah, I do, the license plate. No, I mean a number up in your back window. I said, what number? Like, who's your favorite race car driver, Mr. Bell? Because I promise you, in 1997, it was a rule in Cumberland County, you had to have your favorite race car driver's number on the back of your car. And if you didn't, they were going to kick you out of Cumberland County. It was a real deal. And oh my goodness, don't you have Jeff Gordon's number on there? People would come and firebomb your house because you were not allowed to like Jeff Gordon because he didn't have a southern accent. You had to be like Rusty Wallace or Dale Earnhardt. You had to love one of them guys. You were not allowed at all because the group, you were judged by who your favorite race car driver was. At least among my students, it was true. We get judged sometimes by the groups that we're in. Sometimes it's so easy, there's so much pressure to be part of a community that it's difficult sometimes, people begin to lose themselves a little bit. Communities have rules and constraints sometimes, being part of certain groups. You're expected to dress a certain way. I noticed I've got friends that in Cleveland and Chattanooga that like certain churches, this is true, you'll start noticing the pastor starts fixing his hair a certain way, and you watch that congregation, and after a few months, you'll start seeing more and more of the men all have their hair fixed like that. They'll all wear their hair the same way. You see this in any group. You see kind of the dominant people in that group. After a while, we start identifying, and that's not all bad. That's a good thing that helps us bond. But the problem is when our identification with a group of people, we tend to start feeling a little bit lost because we all know that who other people think we are sometimes is very different than who we really are. And while being a human being is this really, really tricky thing, we've got two things that we really, really want at the same time. We really want to belong. We want to belong. We want to be a part of a group so badly. There is something inside of us. That's one of the reasons why I don't judge my students that are in gangs. One of the reasons why I've been able to get along with a number of gang members and gang leaders, actually. It's very strange when I know I'm talking to a high-level member of the 8th Street Crips. I've got him on the phone talking about his son. And every now and then thought crosses my mind, I hope I don't tick this guy off, And I'm talking to them, but I realized when you really get to talking to them, they're a member of a gang because they want to belong. They feel isolated, they feel alone, and in their neighborhoods, the people with all the power are the gangs. They don't feel like they have any power. They don't have any ability to define their own lives, so they want to be part of a group. And these people who have no dads, their moms are gone, they're living with their grandparents, they don't have any connection, they don't feel a connection, so these gangs become their families. We want to really, really belong, but at the same time, we really, really want to stand out and be an individual. I remember at Cumberland County High School, the goth craze started in the late 90s. And so I had a girl in my class who started wearing all black and wearing really ultra white makeup with black lip liner and black eyeliner. And she had to look like this, really sad, like all the time. And she said, Mr. Bell, I'm goth, and, I said, quit talking like that. You're from Crab Orchard. But Mr. Bell, as I stare into the abyss of the nothingness, and every essay she would write would start with, as I stare into the abyss of the nothingness. And I remember asking her one time, I asked the girl, I said, Emily, why have you taken on this persona? She goes, I want to be different. This is the real me, and I just want to be different. Well, after a while, I noticed that the only person she hung out with were other girls that looked just like her. And after a while, you see that with nonconformists. Why'd you get that tattoo? Because I want to stand out, man. Well, now everybody's got a tattoo. It's going to be really funny in about 10 years. I'm making this prediction. You're going to go in for a job interview, and they say, you know what, Fred, we really like a lot of what you bring to offer, but we don't think we can offer you the job. You don't have any ink. So sorry. It's going to be like that in about 10 years. You watch. People do things. We do all kinds of things. All of us do that to stand out. But because we want to stand out, but we also want to fit in, we find ourselves gravitating to other people that are like us. And we want to do that. And that's not all bad. Here's the problem. The problem is somewhere along the line, in a family, in a group, at a job, in your social group, hobby group, whatever it is, sometimes it's easy to lose who you really are. It's really, really easy. After a while, you start hungering for somebody to see you, to really see you for who you are and accept you for who you are. You start really wondering, does anybody know what's really going on inside? What most of the research is telling us now is that the person that we put out there for others to see, sometimes even for our own families to see, is very disconnected from the real person that's going on inside. And psychologists tell us that the healthiest people in the world are the people that have learned to integrate those two people. Their public person has become a lot more closely related to their private person, who they really are. The other thing that hurts us in these areas is that sometimes we've been beaten up by life so much that we have forgotten that we have strengths and abilities and things that can make a difference and things that can help us to really shine in this life. And that person's been beaten out of you for so long emotionally. Today we're going to talk about a guy named Peter. Actually, he was born Simon. His name was Simon. Simon was a 30-year-old husband, father, son, brother. We all know this from the Bible. He was a fisherman, and the other thing he was a zealot. Now, this is kind of hard for us to understand, but give you a picture of what Simon was like. You know, when we're watching TV and they show today, a terrorist bombed an embassy in Lebanon. And we see that on the news. And they show a picture of the dude that get it, and he's got some kind of wrap around his head, and he's dark complected. And we go, oh, that guy's a terrorist. That was Peter. That was Simon. Before he met Jesus, he was one of those guys. He was part of a group of people that went around trying to upset the Roman government, tearing up their stuff, attacking soldiers, protesting in the streets. That was him. He was like those guys we see on TV in the Middle East today that are protesting about control over their land. They're like the Palestinians, not liking that Israel has control of their land. That was Peter. Simon was that guy. Simon was the guy. He had these huge, large swings of emotion. He was very emotional. He would get very angry. He was a hothead. He's the kind of guy that man could get in a fight. If he went to a bar, he was going to get in a fight. That was Simon. That was the same Simon that one day his brother said, hey, Simon, you got to come meet this guy. His name's Jesus. You got to come meet him. See, Simon meant one who hears. But his name also had another meaning. It had a connotation that people who heard the name Simon didn't remember its original meaning. People who heard the name Simon thought of a flittering butterfly. In his day, that was that name. You know, names have literal meanings. You can look up in a book or look up online. You can find out the literal meaning. My name, for instance, Galen. Okay, it comes from Dr. Galen, who was a Greek doctor, and Galen literally means one who heals. Sounds pretty good. That's what my parents were going for. And I thought I had an okay name. You know, growing up, it was okay. Got in a few fights in elementary school because some kid would go, "Hey, gay man from Gayland." You know, fights began that way when I was a kid. And then I went to Sweden. And I was in Sweden. I was on a trip traveling from Holland, where I was living, up to Finland. On my way back, came through Sweden. Tour guide that was with me saw me go by. I bought something in one of those gift shops. Growing up, the problem with the name Galen is you never get to see your name on stuff. Like when they sell those nameplates and there was never a Galen. Those Coca-Colas they've got out now with people's names on them, there's still not a Galen on any of them. I haven't found one. If you find one, send it to me. I'll give you $20 for that Coke. Okay, it'll be a really good investment for you. Never find my name on anything. I'm there in Sweden in a gift shop, and I read something that said, "Du Garmik Galen." They pronounce it Colin. Galen. I was so excited I bought it. And it was a little pillow with little feet on it, and it was in the shape of a heart with a face on it. And it said, "Du Garmik Colin." So I took it to this tour guide guy that was standing nearby with a group, and I said, "I'm sorry, I hate to bother you. I know you're leading that group right there, but what does this mean?" "Du Garmik Colin" means, "You drive me crazy." In Sweden, they really know me there. Because in Swedish, my name means not one who heals. It means crazy. They had a 15th century leader named Galen who lost his mind and went crazy and did all kinds of crazy stuff. And so from then on, that guy's name became a euphemism for crazy. Names have literal meanings. They have connotative meanings. Simon meant flittering butterfly. But he meets Jesus. Jesus found a way to bring out the best in him. And the scripture tells us, well, I went too far, so sorry. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, son of John, but you will be called Cephas," which is translated Peter, and in English means the rock. All of his life, he had been the kind of guy where somebody said, "Hey, Dan, that guy was talking about you. Who? I'm going to go beat him up." He was a hothead. He got mad about everything. Flew off the handle. He was uneducated. He was loud. He was brash. He was kind of just tossed by whatever everybody else was upset about. Peter was too. He was that guy that would type up would read something on Facebook that wasn't even true, and then we'd get mad about it and post all kinds of things about it on Facebook. He was that guy. Rant and rave about nothing with no factual basis whatsoever. He was that guy. And Jesus looked at him and said, "You know what? Right now you're called Simon. But from now on, you've been called a flittering butterfly, but from now on I'm calling you the rock." The opposite of the way the world saw him. Jesus saw his truest self. Jesus saw him. And that day, Jesus changed his name from flittering butterfly to rock. I don't care what you've been told about yourself. I don't care what the world has told you about yourself. I don't even care what that negative voice is inside your own head that tells you negative things about yourself constantly. Jesus knows you. He knows your real self. And his interest isn't for you to just become a nice little boy and behave right and act right. For a lot of people, their picture of Christianity and religion is that the whole goal of becoming Christian is to make you act nice. And as my daddy always said growing up in a lot of his sermons, he said, Jesus didn't come to make bad little boys act good. Jesus came to make dead people live. He came with a purpose. He wants to come into your life and help expose the real you. The real you, the genuine you, the you that maybe you don't even know. And he doesn't want to make you just act religious. He doesn't want to make you act nice and be politically correct or be religiously correct. He wants to help bring out your most genuine, real person that you are. How does he do that? Number one, Jesus knows our strengths. God knows our strengths. Why? Because he put them in there. The New Testament tells us that he places gifts in every single person. That everyone has gifts. Everyone has talent. Research is finally catching up with that in my world in education. We've started realizing that this thing called multiple intelligences. We used to think that some students are smart and some are dumb. And we used to say if you have a high IQ, well, first we said if you had really good grades and you make all A's, you're smart. And if you make all F's and D's, you're dumb. And then we realized, no, some people just don't do the work and turn it in. So what is it? Then we came up with a test called intelligence quotient. The intelligence quotient, which is IQ. So we started testing kids for IQ, and all that test is someone's ability to process information quickly and efficiently. And so we started saying, if you have a high IQ above 100, you're smart. If you have an IQ below 100, you're dumb. Now scientists are realizing that everybody is smart, but in different ways. Something we've all known for years. Because the old adage is the A students end up working for the B students for companies owned by the C and D students. Check it out. Think about where you work. The kids who make the straight A's in school end up working for managers that were the B students, the BC students, but the companies are actually owned by that guy that barely graduated high school, if he did at all. Why? Because everybody's smart. We're just now figuring out people have different types of smart. There are things you're smart about that I'm not. There might be one or two things that I know that you don't. I know a lot about movies. That'll really pay me really well, huh? My daughter and I, man, we have this app that we look at. We can't watch a movie at home without looking at this app and learning all the trivia behind the scenes stuff about that movie. Why do we do this? I don't know, but I know a lot about it. I know my linking verbs. Yeah, be as am or was, were, become, get, your, sin, pure, look, feel, taste, smell, remain, continue, sound, turn, and other forms of these verbs. Hey, I'm smart. I know that. But as I learned trying to redo the patio in my backyard for Peggy has a high opinion of me. You need to pray for her. My problem is that my wife thinks I'm dumb. Oh no, my wife thinks I can do anything. She thinks I can do anything. She thinks she knows that I have strengths that I don't have. A job redoing my patio pavers and leveling them out should have taken 2 days. It took me 3.5 weeks. And I have had to redo it like 3 or 4 times. Why? I'm not smart about stuff like that. Thank God that he knows my strengths. The word says, I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. Before you were born, I set you apart. The other thing he knows our weaknesses. Oh, and something I forgot to do. I totally forgot to do. Oh, my goodness. Hey, would you, we're going to call time out here. I know we've, see, You're smarter than I am. Some of you have already done this. You know, for the last few weeks, the pastor's had you set your alarms. Well, set your alarm, if you haven't already, for 11:25. The great news is you know that this torture can only last a few more minutes. Okay, so 11:25. You are that much closer to beating the Baptists to the restaurants, okay? You'll be at Gondola before them, okay? And you'll be like there an hour before the Pentecostals, so you'll be in great shape. Because at 11:25, I'm just going to walk off the stage, no matter what's going on. Because we really do want you to understand the urgency. And Pastor's been talking with us about really, it's time. Folks, it is time to stop letting ourselves be determined and be defined by the outside world. It's time for us to stop being defined by our jobs. It's time for us to stop being defined by our past, or the negativity in our lives, or negativity from our past, or negative people in our lives, or what's worse, from the negative person inside of each of us. It's time for us to stop being defined by that and have a real relationship with Jesus Christ and let Him define us. Let His view of us become the clear view of us. There is a you, and He knows our strengths. He knows our weaknesses. Yes, there are things that every single one that goes on inside of our own brains and our own hearts that crosses our minds that we don't want anybody to know. Why? Because we have weaknesses. Every human being does. Look around. There's some good-looking people here. We're a good-looking bunch. But if you could see inside of every person's head here, you would see fear. You would see some insecurity. You would see the same problems and issues you've got inside your own head going on inside of other people's heads too. That's one of the things I really love about this church. From the very beginning, we wanted to create a congregation and have a place where we could come and learn about Jesus and worship together and really do our best not to judge each other. Really do our best not to evaluate people by their weakest moments, but to try to see one another the way Jesus sees us. A place where we're not going to judge you by the way you dress here. Your past is your past. If we can be a part of improving your future, great. Come to Grace. Hang out with us. We're messed up too. Oh, and by the way, if you're not one of those people, if you think you've got it all together, there's the door. You think I'm kidding. Because the most messed up people in the world that I've met think they have it all together. They think they're all straight. You know what Jesus said about those people? In Jesus' day, those people were called the Pharisees. Buddy, they dressed just right. They talked all the religious words. They could quote all the laws, plus the prophets, plus all the other stuff they had made up and added to the laws and prophets. They could quote all that stuff, and they acted very religious. Jesus looked at them and said, "You are the children of Satan because you act just like your daddy." By the way, there are no cuss words in the English language that are as bad as calling someone the child of Satan. Okay? You can't cuss someone out. You might be a great trash talker, but Jesus is the king. He looked at the religious people who thought they had it all together and thought they were perfect and said, "You're messed up." He looked at the adulterer and the prostitute and said, "I don't condemn you. Go your way and don't sin anymore. Love God with all your heart and love each other, and you'll be in good shape." Because Jesus knows our strengths, but He knows our weaknesses too. He knows the stuff we hide. He knows the stuff that we hide from. He knows what scares us. He knows what hurts us. But I love what the Apostle Paul said. He said, "I would rather glory in my weaknesses," he said, "for when I am weak, then I am strong." Apostle Paul, a guy who wrote most of the New Testament, a person who spread the gospel into Rome and beyond and around the world. We can still consider him to be one of the greatest Bible teachers of all times. And even he said in the book of Romans, he said, "I find that when I try to do the right thing and try to do good, Evil's present with me, and I end up doing the wrong thing. He goes, and then when I try to keep from doing the wrong thing, that's the very thing I end up doing. The Apostle Paul said that. I don't know where we got this religious idea that once we become a church-going person, and once we come forward and shake the preacher's hand, and once we get saved, and once we become a Christian, somehow we would be perfect after that. That's a myth, and it's not in the Bible. It is nowhere in the Bible that once you become God's person and you give your life to God, that you're going to be perfect after that. You're not. You're still going to mess up. You're still going to struggle with your weaknesses because they're going to be there. But the good news is you're also going to have your strengths to operate with that God will use to bless other people. And sometimes he's going to take your weaknesses and make them your strengths and make them the very things that help to impact and help other people. One of the reasons why Celebrate Recovery works, it's people who've been there and God's helped them and is still helping them, and all they're doing is reaching back a hand saying, hey, brother, you can come with me. That's all that is. I'm no better than you. I'm just at a different place in my journey than you might be. Here, man, here, come hang out with us. We'll love you too. We actually need to celebrate recovery for everything. Because we're all recovering from stuff. I am. I've got crazy insecurities that if I didn't have godly people in my life to encourage me, to help remind me what Jesus thinks of me, I would be in bad shape. He knows our weaknesses. He knows our strengths. And praise God, he knows our potential. He doesn't just see us for who we are right now, which is valuable to me. I'm a kid that grew up all my life. My dad was a minister. I don't remember. I was telling my wife yesterday and Blair. By the way, the young lady that was singing with us today, that's my youngest son, Burton. It's his girlfriend. Yeah, he did okay. Besides the fact she's also a straight A student, feeds the poor. You think I'm kidding. She volunteers her time. She never comes to our house without bringing baked goods. We really like Blair. And on top of that, she can sing. And she is so excited. She goes to a great big church in Cleveland, Tennessee, but yet she was so excited about getting to come. And she'd heard about Grace, and she walked in this morning and went, this is the famous Grace I've heard about. Amazing young lady going off to Lee University this next year. Probably be singing with Sophie soon. God knows our potential. He doesn't just know where we are now and what we're doing now, but he knows our potential. And I don't know, I'm in education, and let me apologize on behalf of some of us teachers who may have told you along the way that you're never going to amount to nothing. Number one, that's a double negative, and they shouldn't have said it. And number two, that teacher may have just been frustrated that day. That teacher doesn't know what God knows. Nobody knows what God knows except God. That's why a relationship with him is vital. That's why Jesus hung on a cross and shed his blood and honored the sacrifice that was needed to cover everybody's sin forever. And an important thing happened. Before then, God's presence could only be experienced behind this thick veil with this altar at the temple of God. And the moment that Jesus died on that cross and breathed his last breath, they said that there was an earthquake, and that veil, which was about that thick, of this thick curtain material, split right in two, and God's presence was released out into the world. God's holy, perfect presence, his Spirit, is available for everybody now. Everybody. Anybody. Well, I'm pretty messed up, Galen. I've got some big faults I got to get straight before I can come to God. No. Peter was still messed up. Did you know that after Jesus changed his name, you have been called Simon, you have been flittering butterfly, now you are a rock. 2 or 3 weeks later, Simon said something stupid. Peter now said something stupid to Jesus. And Jesus just looked up. He just looked closed his eyes and said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." Now, he wasn't calling him Satan, but Jesus got frustrated with him. Peter still did some stupid stuff after this. When the soldiers came to get Jesus, Peter flew off the handle. He went back to being Simon again, grabbed the soldier's sword, and cut the soldier's ear off. Jesus had to stop what he was doing, pick up that ear, stick it back on the soldier's head, and heal him. And looked at Peter and went, "Really? 3.5 years you walk around with me? Did you not listen to anything I said, man?" I can relate to him. I coached high school football for a long time. You know how it is with your own kids, right? You've told them something over and over again, and then they act like they've never heard you say a word. Peter was that guy. Before this rooster crowed the next morning, Peter had even denied, after telling Jesus, he's the Christ, he's the Messiah, I'm never going to leave you, Jesus. A few hours later, he was going, "Jesus, I don't know who you're referring to." 3 times he denied Jesus, and the last time he cussed somebody out for accusing him of knowing Jesus. But before that, Jesus had said to him, "Simon, someday you're going to mess up. Peter, you're going to mess up. But when you recover from that, go encourage your brothers. I'm going to need you to do that." Because Peter did recover from his failure. And Peter did move on. And on the day of Pentecost, when the Spirit of the Lord fell, and people began to tell the story of Jesus in different languages to everyone that was gathered there in Jerusalem, Peter stood up and gave a sermon, and over 3,000 people decided to start believing in Jesus that day from the rock. From that day on, Peter was a pretty consistent person that everybody else came to for stability. Jesus knew his potential. He knows your potential. He knows your potential. And I don't care what negative thoughts are in your mind. I don't care what negative things you've been told about yourself. I don't care how much people in your family, in your lineage have failed. I don't care how much you have failed. Jesus knows your potential. And he wants you to get to know the person that he knows. But you're going to have to surrender to him. You're going to have to open up your heart to him. And believe, not so much in yourself, but believe in the person that Jesus is creating you to be. And he's still working with you. Thankfully, he's not done. Thankfully, he's not finished. Let's stand together. Being confident in this, that he who began a good work in you will be faithful to carry it out to the completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Next time something negative, that you're a failure, that you're a loser, that you're never going to have healthy relationships, you're never going to be successful, that you're never going to accomplish anything, you're never going to help anybody else, that you're never going to be healthy, remember this: he who began a good work in you, from before the time you were born, throughout your entire life, he will complete that in your life. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for loving us. Jesus, thank you for coming and living in this world, enduring what we endure, and going through what we go through. Thank you that you know us, that you see us, that you pay attention to us, and that you care about us so much. That you care about us so very much. That when you look at us, yeah, you see our strengths. Yes, you see our weaknesses. But you see the person that we can be. So I pray today that you will open our eyes, our spiritual eyes, and let us see ourselves the way you see us. Cleanse us from those things that hold us back. Help us to block out the negative words and the negative voices in our lives. And help us to listen only to you. In Jesus' name. This week, what I want you to do is to make a list of your strengths. Make a list of some of your weaknesses. And every day pray, Lord, you see me. You see me. Help me to be the person you see me to be. Get to know Jesus. He's standing here waiting for you. Say, I've been a Christian for a long time. I know a lot of Christians who still don't seem to really know Jesus. I'm still learning about him. It's a friendship he and I have. It's a friendship he and I have that has changed my life. That helps me to be my best self. My family loves me. My friends love me. I believe my friends here at Grace love me. Have a great week. It's time.